Welcome to lesson 3. We're going to do dynamics today and bow distribution. Bow distribution is where you have, if you have a long note, you have a long bow, and if you have a shorter note, you have a shorter bow, and that's it in a nutshell really. So if I was to play 4 beats here, I use a long bow, and if I play short notes, crotchets, I can play a short bow at the tip, starting at the tip. I can also play 4 short notes down here. And I can play them back here again, but not starting with a push bow, I can start with a pull bow. So lots of variations on long bows and short bows and where you can play them, starting on a pull bow down here, starting on a push bow down here. Just to make you think, oh yes, I've got different ends of my bow and I can do different things with them. If we talk about dynamics, of course, that all slightly changes, because if we have a short note and we want to make it loud, we have to use more bow. So, or a quiet note, a long quiet note. So not using much bow at all. So these are the tools that we have with the bow, and sometimes it's a really good idea just to think of the bow as something like a semi-brief, maybe there, and crotchet, minim, dotted minim, semi-brief, so that you're thinking about your note values when you bow. More about that later though. What I want to do now is the piece on page 27 from Viol Player Book 1, which is called 4-Lane Hope, and this is pretty much on the 2 strings that we're familiar with now, the C and the E string. And what this has is a crescendo on the first 3 notes and then a diminuendo on the second 3 notes. So you can see from this piece, when I demonstrate it in a minute, how I'm using more bow for the louder sounds and less bow for the quieter sounds. So I'll just play some of it. Okay, so I'm putting my bow on the string. Breathing out. Here we go. And so on and so on. And you can see by using more bow, you get more sound. Let's try that together then. So, we talked yesterday, or our last lesson, about putting the hand on, didn't we, from here. So your challenge for this time is to put it on and try and find G on the E string. Okay, look for a bit and then don't look and see what happens. And this is a really good way to orientate your left hand. So look some of the time, but don't look some of the time. Okay, here we go. Let's do 4-Lane Hope then. 1, 2, 3. Did you manage to get those dynamics in there? One thing that can happen when you speed up your bow is that you tighten up, and you get so much better sound if you don't tighten up. If you can still release your arm weight when you're playing with a faster bow, then that's great. So what I want to do now is to just do some dynamics on viol aerobics on the E and the A string. Really focusing on arm weight. bowing from the shoulder, as we mentioned in the second lesson, when you're just bowing and walking. That's that bow motion. Because you'll find that you get a much better sound and you can play louder with a heavier arm. So let's do viol aerobics, but we'll do it with 4s and 2s this time, not 8s and 4s. So 4 E's, 4 A's, 2 E's, 2 A's. And remember, it's come forward and it's come back. Forward and back. So let's do this loud, first of all. Here we go. 3, 4. Repeated everything, didn't I, from the time before? But did you get that feeling of the arm still being heavy even though you're coming round? Yeah. So if we go back to 4-lane hope and just play the first line with that feeling of having weight in the arm, not tensioning anything, but if anything, letting go, and feeling that we can get that louder sound. Here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Isn't it? And of course, a good idea would be to do this would be to memorise the first line. It's a really easy tune to remember, and watch your bow. Make sure it doesn't do that. Make sure it stays down there. Make sure the bow hold is still nice and relaxed. Good ping, good contact, and you feel secure in what you're doing, and you feel secure enough to let go of the weight. So in the last note of this piece, it's a long note, isn't it? It's a dotted minim, so six crotchets. And if I was to play this quietly, without putting my third finger under the hair, the closer I get to here, this is what happens. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So because we've got more tension here, because the point of contact is very close to the string, we need to support the bow a little bit, just on the end there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and take the bow off. And that brings me nicely on to what we're going to do next actually, which is bow retakes. And if you just take your bow off the string and with your third finger underneath the hair, you can see that there, and your thumb rocks the hair. Can you see that? It's just, the third finger is just like a pivot for your bow. And having the third finger underneath the hair enables us to play really quietly. Because it takes the weight of the bow, as well as having a slow bow speed, we can support the bow as well. But when we take the bow off the string, it's the third finger that lifts it off, and as the third finger lifts off, so the thumb has to make contact with the hair. And when you put the bow back on the string, so the third finger falls away and the second finger keeps the contact. So let's just do that again. I've got my bow turned down. I'm lifting the bow off the string with the tip of the third finger, balancing it with my thumb there. Then I'm putting it back on the string, and as I put it back on the string, so my third finger's falling away and I feel like I've got good contact again. And one more time then, lifting off with the tip of the third finger and placing on and letting go. So let's just do this on repeated C's, like this. It's very easy for this to happen, isn't it? A bit of a bounce. But it's only the steadying with the third finger and the thumb on the hair that's making me place my bow back on the string and then let go. So it's a two sort of finger manoeuvre thing, isn't it? Take it off, put it back on. Third finger still on until it gets onto the hair, then it releases. So I'd like to look now at the piece on page 46, The Brawl by Gervais. And I'd like to look at the last note of the first section and the first note of the beginning, because this is exactly what happens here, isn't it? But before we do that, it's a G, so we can orientate our hand, get on the viol. Almost. Look then. Who's looking? Anybody looking? G. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got a G here, push bow. We've got a rest in which to do this, which is very good, because we've got to get back to the tip as well. So we talked about taking the bow off, but now we're placing it back at the tip. So we're down here, taking it off and putting it back on. And all the while we're doing this, I'm supporting with the third finger. As soon as it goes back on the string, third finger's off again. Let's try that. Here we go. Moving the bow back to the tip. So this piece has dynamics in the first two bars, a crescendo, diminuendo, just like For Lane Hope. And then in bar 4, it's got a tenuto, which is making the most of the bow. So more sound, and then it doesn't have it on the next minute because we want to make that weaker. We never really want to play two notes the same, especially if they're the same note value. So one's going to be stronger because it's on a push bow, and one's going to be weaker because it's on a pull bow. When you practice this, practice it pizzicato, and then practice it arco, no left hand. And have a look at where you have to keep your fingers down when you're doing it pizzicato. So again, we're putting fingers down, so we've got the third sounding. So let's just play this then. And practice. We'll do the whole piece with all the repeats. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. In that, wasn't there? With the D string going up, remember I talked about my right leg being a runway, and as I came around here, so that my bow sort of took off and came to this angle rather than to this angle, which sort of feels like a natural thing to do because of the camber of the bridge, but we're going around this way to make that parallel. And of course, when we play the D string, we've got to be as close to the bridge as we can, because it's very easy to do this because it's such a thin string. And of course, if you go too close, it can sound too coarse as well. So lots of dynamics in this. Faster bow. So lots and lots of things to think about there. Okay, well, there's a link to the music for this lesson underneath here, and the book is available from Rondo Publishing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.